My name is Kristof Böhmer and I'm associated to the University of Vienna and especially its Workflow Systems and Technology Research Group. Today I would like to present LoGo, our latest contribution to the area of predictive monitoring, which was a joint work effort of Stefanie, Rinderle-Ma and myself. For this, I would like to start by introducing predictive monitoring and why it's relevant. Let's imagine that we currently take a look at an incomplete process execution. This small example is consisting out of 3 activities and an XOR decision node. In the process execution, we have just completed activity A. Accordingly, the question arises if the next activity will be B or C. This could be quite interesting for a range of different tasks and challenges, for example, to perform preliminary shipments or to organize and reschedule machine usage in advance to increase throughput. Predictive monitoring allows to answer this question and many more. For example, when will a process instance be completed? Which is quite helpful if someone wants to determine in advance if an ongoing process instance execution will most likely succeed and conform to a specific service level agreement or not. And maybe if we see that we will not conform to a service level agreement, we can reschedule things or change things to counter this situation. But still, in the following, the examples will, for the sake of simplicity, focus mainly on activity prediction. But note that the paper talked about here and LoGo is also capable of temporal as well as activity prediction, so you can do both. To perform predictions, typically one starts by gathering 2 components. The first being a subtrace that we want to predict upon, typically an incomplete ongoing process execution. The second one being historic execution traces, which are relevant to this ongoing instance mentioned before and which allow to identify some typical behavior patterns which we can build our foundation of prediction on. Commonly, this historic behavior can be taken from logs generated by process execution engines or recorded by some worker on a piece of paper. This information is later on pre-processed, filtered and so on to build a prediction model that enables us to take the unique behavior of a process execution into account and to exploit it to take an educated guess on the future of an incomplete trace. For example, it enables to predict the next activity as shown as here in this example. But the same approach is used for pretty much all the different prediction tasks. Currently, various prediction approaches exist, which apply a diverse range of techniques. From these, especially neural networks have shown a very high interest in recent years, but also quite good prediction results and quality results. LoGo contributes in this area not only by presenting a novel rule-based prediction approach, but instead, in addition, and possibly even more importantly, it explicitly focuses on combining multiple prediction models for the first time, which specialize on individual strengths and areas. For this, we propose to combine at least 2 prediction models, one focusing on local behavior and one focusing on global behavior. The local prediction approach takes not all the historic behavior into account, but instead only a fraction. A, the historic behavior and the trace that is taken into account must be similar to the one we are currently predicting upon. And B, from this historic behavior we don't take the whole trace, but only a subset of the events which have roughly the same event index assigned to it, similar to the event index that we are currently observing in the ongoing process execution most recently. Below, in the bottom part, you can see how this affects the historic traces which are taken to build the prediction model. Because of A, they compose only of some traces, while B results in selecting only a subset of the different events based on the event index. The applied local approach calculates a range of probabilities from these traces. Given this small example, it's even possible to manually spot that here the behavior indicates a higher probability that D is followed by E. Accordingly, E would be the predicted next activity. In comparison, the global prediction approach takes all historic traces and all contained events into account and tries to spot unique behavior patterns that indicate a specific future behavior. Hereby, its predictions have a higher probability to be correct because we take more data into account, but it also has a significantly higher computational effort that goes along with building the prediction model. Let's again take a look at the historic traces. In this example, you can see that you have all the traces with multiple events, and a pattern that can be spotted is that given the execution of activity C, then D is followed commonly by the activity F. This becomes noticeable when at the bottom we are comparing the first trace on the left with the second and the third trace given here. Accordingly, this global pattern would result in predicting F as the next node. The proposed approach enables to combine the strengths of these multiple prediction models and approaches. In the paper, we reuse an existing probability-based approach that was presented by us previously as the local one. As it is probability-based, it can always be applied, even in situations where no unique global behavior patterns are applicable or were identified that are relevant to the current process instance execution state. Hereby, the local approach becomes a fallback, which is applied when the global one is not applicable, as none of the mined behavior patterns are currently relevant. To build the global prediction model, the paper proposes a novel rule-based prediction approach. It extends existing sequential rules into so-called sequential prediction rules. For these, each rule basically comprises out of three parts. First, the historic execution behavior, denoted here as pre, which is a unique global execution behavior that indicates that when occur an activity that we are currently observing and that is currently most recently observed in the ongoing process execution is taking place, indicates that next will be observed. For example, that next is a specific activity and that this activity will be observed next. When doing prediction, next will then also be predicted. The rule mining explores and possibly identifies all the different global behavioral patterns that could be hidden in the data. This can result in a space explosion, given that we have millions of traces to deal with. To tackle this possibility, we apply existing optimizations already known from rule mining on these sequential prediction rules, which we found to work very well and can significantly reduce the computational effort related to creating our rule-based prediction model. While predicting, or also while mining and creating our prediction model, we separate between relevant global behavior patterns and non-relevant ones by utilizing rule conformance. Basically analyzing how frequently an identified global behavior pattern correlates with some future behavior. The more, the better. Commonly, we chose rather high conformance requirements, such as 80% or more, to ensure that some extracted global behavior pattern that we found and that we represented in our prediction model is really an indication for some future behavior that we can rely on to perform our predictions. We have evaluated the proposed approach and compared it with 14 alternative prediction approaches, which all stem from the predictive monitoring domain. In addition, we used two datasets, two logs, which also are from multiple domains. From these logs, we take the traces, we take some part of the log to train our prediction model and some part to evaluate our prediction model. For the evaluation, we generate all possible subtraces from the traces that we use for the evaluation. Then we apply our prediction approach and we compare, okay, how frequently is our prediction matching with the real future that is represented in these logs. Hereby, we are compatible with our approach to the existing and most commonly used evaluation approaches in the state-of-the-art publications. Two prediction tasks were performed and analyzed. The prediction of the next activity to be executed, which was analyzed using prediction accuracy, so how frequently was the predicted activity equal to the real next activity based on the trace, and the prediction of the next execution event timestamp. Here we apply mean average absolute error. The latter gives us the mean deviation between the predicted timestamp and the real timestamp in days. These tables here summarize the evaluation results. As you can see, the proposed approach in the left column, second left column, outperforms the alternative approaches. The two log files were chosen as they are most commonly utilized by existing work. Still, some approaches were not applied on these by the respective authors. We have represented this situation by denoting the abbreviation NA in the respective cells. You can also see here that the neural network-based approaches are in general quite competent and get quite good results. We see the new proposed view on the prediction, this combination of multiple prediction models and especially the separation between local and global prediction as the most important contribution. This enables to design specialist approaches which focus on specific challenges and which helped us to outperform the comparison approaches. Overall, the approach was also found to be quite fast. Hence, given the existing optimizations for rule mining, we could deal with a potential state explosion and generate the rules quite quickly with a low computational effort. And the same also applies to the local prediction approach, which is more dynamic, must be regenerated more frequently because we always take only a subset of the data into account. But because of this filtering, we only have a very low amount of data that we need to analyze during each prediction run and each application of this local prediction approach, so we get very fast results. The global one, which it takes more effort to create a prediction model for, can be sped up because we are able to generate the rules once and then apply them multiple times in a row of multiple different predictions. Compare it, for example, with existing work that applies like neural networks, which give us quite good results. However, the neural network needs to learn by itself and represent during the training phases. What aspects are global patterns that I can represent, what aspects are not represented in global patterns, and how can I then fall back, like for example on a local approach, to still predict at least something. This takes time because we have to teach the model that it should behave in this way and to learn it, different aspects, and an significantly higher amount of computational power is required in comparison to LoGo. In future work, we will analyze more advanced representations of this global behavior, like more complex rule formulas and systems. And we will check out new application areas. For example, the proposed approach currently predicts activity and execution timestamps. But we think that it's also quite relevant to predict complete process instance completion time. So when will the complete instance finish? For example, to tackle this service level agreement example given at the beginning of this talk. Hence, we will see how to extend our approach to tackle also these areas. I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.